Hello there, thanks for watching this today. I really do appreciate it. We're studying through Ephesians and we're in chapter 4 and we're going to read verse number 29. Now we're in the section where the apostle is teaching the Christians there are things they need to do now that they're saved. That God has done a work of grace, that God has given them a standing before God that is irrevocable, it cannot be changed, but there are things that are expected of the believer. I'll not go back over the ones we've dealt with already, but I was struck recently by looking at them that actually you could go to the book of Proverbs and pick up many of these ideas that are really helpful for us, and we're going to do a little bit of that in this session. But verse 29 says this: "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers." What you say, how you speak, how you communicate with people is of vital importance. In fact, as we carry on in this book, we'll find in chapter 5 that the apostle speaks about inappropriate humour. He'll talk about things that we shouldn't even talk about and shouldn't mention. So it is actually really important what we say and how we speak. Notice that this verse says, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth." Do you know that literally means don't let anything as rotten, anything that is putrid, that anything that is of poor quality come out of your mouth. James writes that the Christian should be slow to speak, swift to hear. So we should be careful as to how we use our tongues. James writes a whole chapter about the power of the tongue and that the same tongue can bless God and curse men. So this is a really important topic. And I was looking at it in the book of Proverbs, and I was reading and thinking what it said there. It says in Proverbs chapter 8, "All who fear the Lord will hate evil. Therefore God says, I hate pride and arrogance, corruption and perverse speech." And as you run through Proverbs, you'll come across this time and time again. There are ways to speak that help people. And here is a warning here: let no corrupt communication. Don't let putrid, rotten things come out of your mouth. The Lord Jesus taught the heart is, Jeremiah writes, the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. But the Lord Jesus taught out of the mouth, out of the heart proceeds in Mark chapter 7. So he reminds us that our heart is a cesspool. Thankfully, God has saved us, those of us that have repented of our sin and believe the gospel. And we've come into the blessing of salvation, and we're so grateful for that. We enjoy the blessing of that. But there should be a change in the way we speak. We mustn't let what is in us by flesh, by nature, come out. Sometimes it does that under pressure. Sometimes that happens when we're in a corner and when things are difficult. And the apostle is saying, let no corrupt communication come out of your mouth. But as he does time and time again in this section, he doesn't just tell you what you've not to do. He tells you what you have to do. So he says, don't let that foul stuff come out of your mouth, but that which is good. So be very careful. Be very thoughtful. Make sure that what you say builds people up. It doesn't destroy them. Proverbs 24 talks about dishonest and deceitful words. But Proverbs 16 speaks about words that develop people and their character. You can go and look at these references. There are many, many references about the tongue and words and how we use them in Proverbs, as well as I've already indicated, particularly the writing of James. But listen to what he says. That which is good to the use of edifying. Are you known to be a person who what you say builds people up, lifts them up, gives them a better character, helps them grow in their faith, helps them be stronger in their walk with God? We should be those who build up, not destroy. We should, in the words of God's message to Jeremiah, we should pull down things that are bad. So that's not to say we don't ever identify wrong. It's not to say we don't ever talk through things that need to be adjusted or need to be repented of, that there are responsibilities. Elders have responsibilities. Bible teachers have responsibilities. Friends have responsibilities. We have a responsibility to each other in that sense. But what you do is ultimately to build up, construct, and help that person to be a better believer, to walk more sincerely with God, to live for the pleasure and the glory of God. So make sure what you say is good, that it builds up, it edifies God's people, and it ministers grace unto the hearers. That's a beautiful expression. It ministers grace. You are, as a Christian, privileged to dispense the grace of God and the kindness of God, the goodness of God to the people that you meet. That your word should instill in them an awareness of God's goodness, God's grace, God's loving kindness, God's mercy. That you are someone who now you can't do that if you're not enjoying it. You can't do that if you don't live in the good of that. So it is paramount, it's vital that you and I walk with God, live in fellowship with God, enjoy the grace of God. And that, like the Lord Jesus, it might be said of us that grace was poured into our lips. He was perfect in this way, of course. His words were always appropriate, always measured, always right. But everything he said and did was for the glory of God and for the ultimate benefit of those who heard. We can minister grace to those who hear us. That would be a wonderful thing for people to note us, not as gossipers, not as storytellers, not as critics, but those who build each other up and those who minister and serve the grace of God in the things that we say one to another. God bless you. Thanks for watching this. I really do appreciate it.